up on the final EndZone preview show, 5A and 6A. Seeing green, who can beat West Point? No one's done it in 2 years. Also, Starkville, fly fast, sting hard. That's the motto this year. Starkville looks like the favorite. Who could even contend with the Jackets? And Tupelo, let's talk about the green wave or the golden wave. Can they get over the playoff hump? Jordan thinks so. We'll have much more coming up next.
WCBI's EndZone Preview Show with Tom Ebel and Courtney Robb is brought to you by OCH Sports Medicine, Carl Hogan Toyota, and Wade Incorporated.
Green wave, golden wave, all sorts of waves here on the final EndZone Preview Show before we kick off the 2018 season. Braden Bishop from Miss 98 Scoreboard Show. We're missing Adam today, but at least we have our smiling, beautiful faces here on a Wednesday.
Whatever you want to say.
And so 5A and 6A, man, we have a show for you. Obviously, we have plenty of 5A, 6A helmets. They love the show here on WCBI EndZone, and we love them just as much too. Braden, when you look at 5A and 6A, maybe what are some of the things that stand out to you?
These are the big boys. We talk about this every year. It's so exciting to lead up to a night like tonight where you talk about your perennials, your West Points, your Starkvilles. And then there's some people out of our area too that we have to keep an eye on. So this is just going to be a fun night where you find the teams that are in your local area. And these are the kids that there's just the second teams and third teams are really, really good. So it's fun to talk about. And
we saw those a lot in the spring games and the jamborees this past week. You know, you mentioned it. Second string and third team. I can think about Starkville. We were there for the jamboree this past weekend, and the second team at Starkville is just about as good as any 4A team that you can imagine. And so you look at the tradition of a lot of these schools, and we're just getting started here on the final EndZone Preview Show. 5A is up next. West Point, Lafayette. Tune in. Welcome back here to the EndZone Preview Show, the final one before we kick off the 2018 season. Talking 5A football now. It has been all West Point Green Wave owning Class 5A for the past 2 years, Braden. That team last year, you've watched plenty of high school football. Where does that team rank among some of the best you've ever seen?
Well, I hope you don't see the highlight, but they played Tupelo in a jamboree last year, and first play of the game to the house, and that was a good Tupelo defense. But goodness gracious, West Point, they're just doing it, and they're just producing year after year. And when you have Coach Chambliss's players that come through that system, and they're seriously reloading at every aspect of the ball, especially on the offensive side.
It's funny, you look at all these highlights here. This is the jamboree against North Panola. We talked about them yesterday as North Panola being your pick to go all the way in 3A. And Starkville, it was more of a bend, don't break kind of first drive against KJ Jefferson, an Arkansas commit. But after that, the Greeny defense just came alive. Two guys to watch. Jake Chambliss will be under center a lot more. Coach's son getting things done. Marcus Murphy was out of the shotgun a lot last year. And Jimothy Mays looked really good in that jamboree against North Panola. That was the guy who had those two long runs. One of those ended up being a touchdown. So it's like you mentioned, with West Point, a lot of people might look at the amount of people they lost this past year. The Marcus Murphy, Chris Calvert, Terrence Cherry, Jason Brownlee. I mean, you can name, I think they had 13 guys on their signing day last year. But with West Point, it's who's next.
That's right.
It's guys who haven't shined yet.
And when you have guys named Jimothy, I mean, they're destined to do really, really
Absolutely.
well.
All name team.
Yeah,
right
the name thing that you're going to see, you may not see the names that you've seen in the last couple of years, but don't let that take away from the fact that they are going to run house in that division more than likely. They're the team to beat, regardless of who they lost and what they did last year. They're just that good. This jamboree says it all.
Exactly, and that's why they made North Panola work for everything they have. Obviously, it's a class differential, but North Panola is a fantastic football team. At West Point, everyone's like, look at this guy, number 2. That's not Marcus Murphy. That's the next guy in the number 2 jersey. So with West Point, the way I look at them this year is I'm not counting them out until someone beats them. But if you're looking at one team in that division that I really think could make some noise. Some people say Olive Branch, Grenada, Lake Cormorant. It's Lafayette for me. That's a winning football team with plenty of tradition. They have a lot coming back, most notably Alabama commit Brandon Turnage. Missed almost all of last year with a foot injury. Lafayette, they're another one of those teams that has tradition, has a program standard. I think they could be the team that West Point might have to watch out for.
Yeah, and you always got Lafayette in the mix. You go back, 7 years ago when they went through a program in which they didn't lose a game for 2 seasons. And, when you have names like Eric Jeffries and Jamie Shaw, and, word is there's some kids over there playing at Lafayette that you didn't see them playing there last year. Lafayette, they're an interesting team to watch. They may go 1-3 in the non-conference, and then they string like 8-1 and go to playoffs. So they're a team that just has a rich tradition. I like their stadium. I like their fans. That goes a long way too.
They have a heck of a video board now.
Oh my goodness!
Too. It could match up with some SEC programs.
That's right.
But with Lafayette, you mentioned one of the big question marks for them was losing Jamarcus Quarles, who, again, against West Point last year, he was one of the only people that broke off a big run against that Green Wave defense last year. But Jamie Shaw, that's the guy who I could expect to see a lot of in the backfield for the Commodores. But looking at Saltillo, too, in that division, new head coach. They got killed by the injury bug last year. Ryan Summers takes over. One of my favorite guys they had last year was Titus Hurd at QB. He got hurt. But Saltillo, a team on the rise. I mean, it must be tough going up against teams like West Point and Grenada every year. What do we expect from Saltillo?
Just a Lee County team that's going to have a really good schedule to begin with. I believe they're playing North Pontotoc on Friday night. So they're going to be battle tested. Fun fact, Ryan Summers taught me junior high football. So, yeah, I'm pulling for him, definitely. He's in the same county as me. So I do think Saltillo is going to definitely improve that record from last year. And who knows, they may pull that 3rd or 4th spot in the division.
Absolutely. And some of, down south in 5A, Hattiesburg is the team to watch.
Oh, yeah.
They were there last year, lost to that super West Point team, but they reload. Grenada, can't count them out either. And Laurel, those are 3 teams that might be on that teetering West Point side. But coming up, 6A is up next. Starkville, Tupelo, a lot of expectations. We'll talk about it coming up next. We're talking 6A football next, the biggest of the boys here on the EndZone Preview Show. We'll start with the man who knows Tupelo football better than I do. You were there earlier today. Talk about Tupelo. Obviously the expectations are high for that offense, bringing back J-Rock, Jordan, Stephon, Peyton Puckett. But what do you think can Tupelo get over that playoff hump this year?
Tupelo hasn't lost a regular season game in almost 3 years. So it's one of those things that I think that they're going to go through some growing pains this year, but that doesn't mean they're going to have a bad year. I think they're really fast on defense, but I think that that's going to be something that you kind of have to look out for just to kind of see what the slots that they're going to be filling in. But the offense, Jordan Buchanan right there, you're seeing he's going to have a huge impact. He's going to play the number 2. Look out for this guy, David Hayes. Broke his foot in the 2nd game of the season last year. You don't hear about him a whole lot because of Mr. J. Rock Williams. And go figure, the kid gets hit like 7 times and doesn't go down. But Trent Hammond has built just a perennial program at Tupelo High School, and he's done a really good job. He's got some fantastic assistants, too.
Yeah, Ryan Keaton from Nanawaya now joining the offensive line. Obviously, he had plenty of success with the Warriors, and they've built a crew over at Tupelo.
Yeah, and I think that they're really excited about the offensive side. You got Jordan Jernigan, you got Peyton Puckett, you got Stephon McGlone, who is just like a Mack truck to take down right there, and he runs that trap and counter option. He's hard to take down. I'm glad I don't play on defense against them, but Tupelo's going to be fun to watch.
I think his nickname's going to be Minicam. He's like the Minicam Newtons. Yep. Big guy. You're right. I would not want him. The real bummer for me is Tay Standifer. Would have loved to see Tay this year. Of course, he's out for the year with a torn ACL or torn Achilles. A torn Achilles. So wishing Tay the best in his recovery as an Ole Miss commit. But again, the defensive side, replacing guys like Jed Johnson and Peter Gray. Again, it'll be the same thing as West Point, just new guys filling in, possibly making a name for themselves. But also another team I want to get to here in 6A, same division, 1-6A, the Columbus Falcons. We just saw them this past weekend at the New Hope Jamboree, and I got to say, there aren't a lot of expectations for the Columbus this year, but I'm very high on them after that Jamboree. They got a QB, Jalen Craddock, looked great. Derek Jordan at running back, you're seeing him go 80 yards to the house. Columbus is a team I think could sneak up on some people this year.
I think so too, and I was once employed at Columbus, and they have phenomenal athletes on the field. They get out there, they play really, really hard. They have a lot of community support. If they're clicking on offense, they can put up some points. You can see right there. I think the QB question is going to be a big thing right there. But new coach Eric Rice. He's coming into the system, and I think it's going to be fun to watch for them.
And Columbus always has tough defense.
Oh, yeah.
So once they get the offense going, I think Columbus could string some wins together. But another team in that division, Oxford. A lot of growing pains on defense this year for the Chargers, losing almost their entire defense with 10 seniors like Quentin Wilfon, C.J. Terrell, Dada Parham, those guys. Two people to watch. That's one of them. The Pegues bros, Jeremiah and Didi, big fellas. They return 8 starters, but Oxford, they've got the tradition. I wouldn't look past them at all.
I think so too. And one thing you're kind of bringing up with these two teams, Tupelo has to go on the road to both of these schools. They're not gimme weeks. There's never a gimme week in 6A. So look for Oxford. They're going to do really well. They play some teams. This is just going to be an interesting division to watch. It's kind of top heavy, but don't count out Oxford in maybe that 3 or 4 slot.
Some of those top heavy teams you mentioned, Horn Lake, South Panola, South Haven, some of those teams around there. But we'll go to the other side. I'm going to call this the SEC West of Mississippi high school football. 2-6A. Obviously the favorite, I'm rolling with the Jackets. Starkville brings back almost everyone from that state title team last year. Dreek Clark, Zach Edwards, Jalil Clemens, Jalen Ware, Rufus Harvey. It's going to be a junior this year. That kid's going to be a star coming up for Starkville. I think it's a matter of who's going to beat Starkville this year.
Yep. I'm just going to go ahead and throw this analogy out there. They are Pearl 2.0. They look exactly like them from the instances that Pearl went last 2 years ago with Clinton. Played them really, really well in state championship. Came up short at
yard short.
Yeah, and I'm really looking at Starkville a lot like Pearl came back last year, and you know how that ended up happening. They did very, very well, won the championship. But yeah, Coach Jones and Starkville, gosh, they're really, really, really good. And they know they're good.
They absolutely do. And Coach Jones was telling me during the high school football tour stop that it's almost like playing Madden. That's the comparison he made was, the amount of talent, the amount of weapons all over the place on Starkville. Chris Jones said his hobby is just drawing up plays for this guy. It's these guys. They have so much talent, so much depth. We saw them against Louisville this weekend. Number 2 guys, one-hand catches, reeling off big runs. Starkville, again, though, we'll talk about it. The SEC West is 2-6A. You look at Mad Central, Northwest Rankin, Warren Central, Clinton. Those 5 teams there, it's a toss-up with the amount of tradition and the talent. Thinking of guys, Meridian, always athletic. Tupelo will get a chance at them coming up in a couple of days. But you look at Warren Central, 6 starters back. They might be the even team. But then you go down the list. Brandon in 6A. Ole Miss commit Jonathan Mingo. Oak Grove. Georgia commit John Rice Plumley. Wow. MSU commit Jack Harris. Northwest Rankin, Jerry and Jones at wide receiver. They bring back their top 3 targets. So 6A is going to be a heck of a class to watch this year. There's so much talent all over the place.
You're going to see a couple of those teams, of course. You mentioned Tupelo is going to be going to Meridian in about 48 hours. Brandon is going to come up to Tupelo in a month, so that's going to be an interesting kind of setup. Don't look past Warren Central. That's a team that I've always been impressed with over the last 2 or 3 years. Fast guys, play really, really hard. That division, I'm kind of glad I don't have to see that division every week, especially with Starkville. But 6A, it's just one of those things in the North you just have to prepare for, and you got to play every week.
And it's funny, you look at Starkville's non-conference schedule. They start with Noxubee County, then they play West Point, then they play Louisville. So for Starkville, there's no weeks off at any point. And it's the same with Tupelo. I mean, with 6A teams, they play the best of the other classes because it only prepares you for the best class in Mississippi football.
And another thing, just a note, it's very hard for 6A teams to schedule non-conference opponents in predominantly 1 to 4A areas. So, unless you go on the road like Tupelo is going to have to in almost 3 hours away, you got to kind of keep that in mind, but still big.
So the tough part is going to be predicting these classes. We'll have much more on those picks coming up right after the break. So we just talked about how 5A and 6A, I mean, there's no dodging how good of classes they are. But now we have to make picks out of this. We'll start with 5A. And 5A rolling with West Point. Until they're beaten, I don't see anyone in that division outclassing the Green Wave. In 5A South, we'll go to the north. I got West Point and Lafayette. Not too many people are talking about Lafayette, but I think Michael Fair's bunch, that is a talented group. That has a lot of guys coming back. And I think they might be that team out of 1-5A that could give West Point some problems.
I'm going to go with you on that. I mean, it's just the preseason hype. As far as the north, that's what I'm going to go with.
Right.
Yeah, West Point
And obviously with Olive Branch, they lose a lot from last year. They lose Jalen Reed, who's the Mississippi State commit, but you can't keep out Grenada. That's a tradition-rich program as well. But again, you look at at 1-5A, it's been West Point's division, but some of these teams getting some talent, building talent. We'll see where that goes. But again, I'm rolling with West Point out of the north. Until someone beats the Green Wave, I am rolling with them. That's the way I look at it.
All right.
And then out of the south, Hattiesburg, and it's going to be Hattiesburg, West Point, Volume 2, and give me a coin. Let's flip that one because that's star-studded team, a lot of talent. I mean, we'll just have to wait and see with that one, but I'm going with Volume 2 with Hattiesburg and West Point. We're going over to 6A. Who you got, Braden? If you have to make a pick out of these.
Out of 1-6A?
Out of 1-6A. We'll start with that.
1-6A, I'm going to go with Horn Lake, taking that in the division on the number one. I mean, we haven't talked a whole lot about them because they're not in the so-called area, but Nakobe Dean, the dude, is really good. Saw him play last year at Horn Lake. He plays it all. He's really, really good.
Number one ranked player in the state of Mississippi, according to 24/7 Sports. I think that's a great pick, and I'm interested in your pick because it's almost like Tupelo just has to lose one, and then we'll see them in the playoffs. It's almost like they remind me of like the mid-2000s San Diego Chargers. High explosive offense, so much talent, but just can't get over that playoff hump. Do you lose one and then see where that goes?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that I've heard that question quite a few times. It's all about matchups. Tupelo was one last year and hosted a 4, and the 4 was really, really good. Yep. It's just one of those things where it's all about who's playing well. It's all about injuries. It's about where you are. It's 6A, and it's not a cop-out, but it's anybody, any week.
No, I agree. But I'm rolling with Tupelo in 1-6A. You already know where I'm at in 2-6A. I'm rolling with Starkville. I just think, like what you said, that's the pearl pick of this year. So much talent coming back. They experienced the heartbreak last year. I think they're on a mission this year.
And Starkville was really good last year, and I can remember there were some games that it came down to just a few plays at the very end. That division, we talk how good it is. In 2-6A, a few people will be beaten on a night that they're not, quote, supposed to be beaten, so it makes it interesting.
Out of the north, for the north half, I should say, I've got Starkville, Northwest Rankin, and in the south, Brandon and Meridian, and in the end, I've got Starkville over Brandon.
That's a good pick.
Not bad.
Not bad.
But again, to be honest, with Starkville, I'll be interested to see how they play in division play, but that is a team. Just being out at their Midnight Madness, being at the Jamboree this past weekend, from top to bottom, from the first string to the last guy on the sideline, that team is on a mission to win a ring.
I do think Starkville has the weapons to do extremely well, unless something implodes or
health,
big time injuries. I think Starkville's going to be in the driver's seat.
I do. I think so as well. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And of course, let us know. About 10 weeks down the line, let us know if we just made ourselves look like fools up here.
Never, no.
Never, we're not fools. But we'll wrap this one up coming up right after the break.
WCBI's EndZone Show with Tom Ebel and Courtney Robb is brought to you by OCH Sports Medicine, Carl Hogan Toyota, and Wade Incorporated.
That does it for the preview shows. As you can see, I've got the Canes of Mississippi football right here. West Point is on my head.
That's some fighting words, man.
Zaxby's or Popeyes?
Zaxby's.
Zaxby's. Oh, Popeye's just left out.
It's still good.
It's okay. It's tough. It's 5A and 6A. I'm going to take this off the head of my head before the skull comes off. But that's it for the End Zone preview shows. We hope you enjoy. Football is here, just 3 days away. We'll see you there, and we'll see you next time.